calling to say I
What is up, fight fans? I am Jim Gries. Call me Gries. Welcome to the first episode in a long time. Not the first ever episode, but returning series here on MMA Weekly. It is called UFC Fallout. We'll be here after every numbered event. Eventually, maybe every week after the big UFC fights, we have the big boxing matches, even the circus ones. We are going to be here for you, and we won't just be live on fight nights anymore. We'll be here doing recaps. It's a big show today. I've been around this sport a long time, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. I'm talking press conferences. I'm talking red carpets. I'm talking Hall of Fame inductions, front row center for some of the biggest fights in UFC history. And the one thing I've learned about covering this sport is sometimes the belt isn't the story. The fight is. That was the case at UFC 326. The BMF was on the line, but it was a footnote in its own fight. Why? It was number 3 in the world. It was number 4 in the world. It was 2 legendary former champions looking to reclaim their spot at the top of the mountain as their career winds to a close. Charles Oliveira and Max Holloway. The BMF belt was a footnote because each guy needed to win to stay in line for that title shot. The win's more important, right? Oliveira wins. Now he's talking about fighting Conor McGregor, maybe the red panty night in his future. So the BMF keeps sliding down that, you know what I'm saying, down that slope in that order of importance in that fight. So it's the 3rd or 4th most important element of that fight, the BMF belt. And the UFC put the BMF belt on that main event. They put a grappler versus a striker. So everybody who's out there ripping Charles Oliveira for what he did in that fight, and it's one of the most dominant performances you've ever seen in a UFC title fight. I'm going to give all my thoughts on that BMF belt. It's unfiltered here on this show. But again, 2 future Hall of Famers fighting for that back-end success story late in their career, so much bigger than a mythical BMF belt that, hey, they gave us as something that, to me, was a marketing ploy. To me, it was Nate Diaz saying, I'm a bad mother bleeper. And there it is. We got the BMF belt. And Nate called it boring MFers the other night. He put that out on social media. So we're gonna talk about this in depth today. And I'll tell you what, when a guy like Charles Oliveira wins a fight like that, you know what might be next, baby, that red panty night with Conor McGregor. I don't know if Conor's ever going to fight again. We'll hit on that today on the show as well. And then, of course, the White House card, Freedom 250, Dana White, John Jones going back and forth. And, man, to see a legend, to see a guy you've been saying is the greatest of all time, to see a guy just really kind of crash out live on social media and then delete it all later like Jones did. And then Dana, Dana, he can be ruthless, and he has been a lot over the years. So UFC Fallout starting now on MMA Weekly. We're going to make this show great every single week. You know what I mean? We're going to make the UFC coverage great again. How about that? I'm not going to dance like this. I'm just kidding. But anyway, here, it's UFC Fallout on MMA Weekly. Now, back to the BMF. You can see on your screen, we're going to hear from Dana White in just a second on this one. Now, all of you who are out there ripping it, saying this is the BMF, you should be fighting like men, you should be this, you should be that. I'm not saying I disagree with you, because that's the spirit with which the belt was created, right? With Nate Diaz, with Jorge Masvidal. But let's not forget the first BMF fight. The doctor stopped it early because of a cut. So they have no control over that. Just like the fighters have no control when the UFC says we're going to make this the BMF fight. Charles Oliveira's first priority is to win the fight. A win, you get paid more, right? Obviously, in so many ways. Number 1 priority is to win. He's got a family, put food on the table. Number 2, to stay in line for that title shot, to get back to the top of the mountain and get another crack at that belt that he might have thought he might never have another crack at again, right? So there's all those things, and then the possible red panty night that make it more important than the BMF belt. And I've kind of made an art over the years of trying to read Dana White, and our own Scott Peterson was front and center at T-Mobile Arena in the press room. You see the shot right there of the boss man, but I've tried to read him over the years, and he's not easy to read, right? The boss man, not easy to read. When I think he's going to come out and just literally kill someone, he doesn't. He sticks up for them. And when I think he's going to stick up for someone, he'll kill them. You know what I mean? And there it is. This Charles Oliveira, Dubronx right there, making his way to the octagon. So Dana will kill them when that happens, and he will be the first to do it. So I thought he was going to come in there after this fight and talk about how it wasn't living up to the BMF standards, and they should have been, throwing bombs at each other from the beginning. But that was not Dana's reaction. You want it? Here it is, live on UFC Fallout.
Dollars, attendance 19,480. It was sold out. 4 performance of the night bonuses: Bellato, Montez, Rodriguez, and Dober.
Dana, dominant work from Charles Oliveira, but maybe not exactly the fight the crowd was anticipating or looking for. What were your thoughts on the way the main event played?
I don't know if anybody was expecting that. I mean, the way he body locked him and took him down so easily and absolutely dominated him on the ground. I thought there'd be a lot more stand up, and I thought that Max would do a better job at defending the takedown. And if he got on the ground, he'd at least pop up a couple, 3 times during the round. But total domination.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the goal of the sport is to win fights, right? But when it's a BMF title fight, do you feel like there's a unwritten rule that you got to fight a little bit differently, that you got to make it a stand-up war and not have a grappling-based approach?
Well, I think you'll have those type of guys, but the goal at the end of the day in every fight is to win. So he did exactly what he needed to do to win. And I think probably, you'll have to ask Max, but in training camp they're probably expecting, if you've seen Charles fight, he's not afraid to go toe-to-toe, stand up, and, they obviously really believed that if they took him down to the ground, tonight would happen.
Yeah, no doubt.
There it is. That's Dana White's reaction instantly to that BMF fight. And you know what? I said at the time, and if you were watching here live on MMA Weekly as you watched Max Holloway bounce out to the octagon, look, I thought what Dana said there is that he basically put it on Max Holloway, said, hey, I didn't know that a legendary champion would be dominated on the ground like that. And I'm paraphrasing. And there's Max. And yeah, Max, and I've seen people fraud checking, quote unquote, Max Holloway. Cut that shit out. This is a legend of the sport. This is a guy who laid waste to an entire division for a long time, a true legendary champion. He's been in there with the best of the best. And people are saying he got fraud checked because of what Oliveira did. And if he had been fighting guys who would try to take him down his whole career, he wouldn't be as legendary. He wouldn't be as great as he was. But no. That's a bunch of crap right there. He's a legend of the sport. He ran into one of the greatest grapplers of all time who fought one of the greatest fights we've ever seen him fight in Dubronx, Charles Oliveira, right? Look at Max there against Dustin Poirier, just lighting him up, lit up Gaethje and dropped him. And we're talking about legends here, right, with Max Holloway. So let's not get too crazy and too carried away with that, because what Charles Oliveira was able to do, and let's be honest, right? You see Gaethje there, who's now got the title fight against Topuria at the White House, and we'll get into that here on the show as well. But I want to tell you this about Max Holloway. Max Holloway prepared for that fight. Max Holloway, his defense was pretty good. His takedown defense wasn't great, and I know Oliveira surprised him. I'm going to get into that in a minute, but Max Holloway's takedown defense was not great. His defense, once he was on the ground, was fantastic. He didn't get choked out in round 1 or round 2, down there almost the whole round, the entire fight, to the point where Oliveira stopped going for those chokes. If you notice later in the fight, he was gassing himself out, burning himself out. It's hard pulling on those chokes for 2 straight rounds and not getting the sub. It's demoralizing. And I thought Max might have a shot there, but give Dubronx credit. He didn't tire out. He didn't let it turn into a stand-up fight, which is a fight that he would not win against Max Holloway, that very few people would win against Max Holloway, which makes Topuria so good because he's equally good on the ground or the feet, which is ridiculous to be that good in both areas. And, a lot of people think Gaethje's in trouble on the White House card. And that was the last fight added, so we'll get to that as well. We still have coming your way on the show. We're going to talk about that Freedom 250 card, about Jones, about Conor being left off, when we might, if we might see either one of those guys again, and why we're not seeing them on this card. If you saw the video I just put out on my social media this week, you saw that. And it's something that, it's the economics of the sport right now. So for Oliveira to get the win, to stay in line for the title shot, the eventual possible red panty night, all those things are more important than the BMF belt. So what the UFC did, first of all, let me just explain why that fight was the main event and why the BMF belt exists. It exists because Nate Diaz gave him a gift from God, really from Nate, but God gave it through Nate, right? The BMF belt. They turned it into a lot of money, a lot of marketing ploys, and more important than that from the UFC standpoint, and if Dana hears this, he's going to kill me, but it is what it is. Look, the BMF belt is a way for them to not have to pay a real champion, right? You know what I'm saying? They don't have pay-per-views anymore. There's no ability to earn points from the fighters or for the UFC to pay fighters pay-per-view points on money that they already have coming in, right? That's not money from the UFC directly. That's money coming from pay-per-views, right? Coming through the pay-per-views, and you get a chunk of that. Well, now that's not there. They're not going to give the fighters a chunk of the Paramount subscriptions every month. You know what I'm saying? That's not happening. So the reason why we're not seeing Conor, the reason why we're not seeing Jones, and they can say whatever they want, the reason why people complain about UFC fight cards week after week, the reason why even the Miami card coming up, it's like, really? This is your Miami card? This was your Sphere card? This is your White House card? These cards should be the greatest cards in UFC history, and they're not, and the reason why is money. You're not going to stack it with expensive fighters when you already have that money guaranteed, regardless of whether you pull numbers, regardless of whether you do pay-per-view. And I don't know the exact wording of the contracts that the UFC has with Paramount or any of their partners for that matter. So I'm fairly confident, though, that I'm not speaking out of turn on this, that I know what I'm saying. I've been around the sport a long time, boxing a long time, pay-per-view a long time. So when I think of it from this standpoint, that's why. Okay. And that's why we have a BMF championship match as a headlining match at a UFC 326 card. You know what I mean? It's a mythical belt. You're not paying a real champion, but you can say it's a championship match and you can put it as a main event going 5, call it a title matchup, and everybody buys it hook, line, and sinker. But I think after what happened in this fight, and I said it at the time when Scott came on and we talked about it, there's nothing more BMF than dominating a guy the way Charles Oliveira did. Now, you can say it was a hump fest. He held him down. It wasn't a stand and trade. They weren't banging in the middle of the ring the way you want to see with the BMF. But correct me if I'm wrong, on any playground in the world, anywhere you go in the world, if one man puts another man on his back and doesn't let him up for 20 of 25 minutes, is that not domination? Is that not a bad mofo? Yes, without a doubt. I understand the argument. It's the BMF belt. We want to see guys like Max and Gaethje, or we want to see guys like Diaz and Masvidal throwing down for that thing. And I understand that too. But what I want to say is the UFC set these guys up for this. So anybody who's ripping Charles Oliveira for this, that's matchmaking. Grappler versus striker. You had to know it was coming. The guy's looking to get back into title contention more than he wants to be a BMF. Come on, guys. I mean, it's not rocket science, and I know you guys get that. So that's my thought on that fight. Tremendously dominant performance from Do Bronx. And while we stay in that division and while we stay with reaction to that, I want to say that, we got Dana's reaction on BMF, and we'll transition on it. I don't think we have anything else from Dana on that BMF fight, but that's really all we need to say about that. A dominant grappler, one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the history of jiu-jitsu, Charles Oliveira, and we saw that. And Max was able to avoid the submission, which I think was kind of like I said about Dricus du Plessis against Khamzat Chimaev. Some of the best work and the best performances of Dricus's career were avoiding death, submission, and being finished in the Khamzat fight. And some of the best work that we've seen Max do was avoid being submitted by that man right there, Do Bronx, Charles Oliveira. And let's not forget, Do Bronx he lit up Chandler, he lit up Gaethje, and he lit up Poirier on the feet. And when he was throwing hands against Max, he looked really good. Cracked him a couple times in the first round. That led to that first takedown. Did it again in round 5. Took him down off the, you know what I'm saying, off the striking too. So he used the striking to set up takedowns. But if you can hold a guy down that easily and have your way with him for that long, there's no way you're letting him up. Big Gucci Soldier Mike, the BMF is dead. And he says the White House event sucks too. Paramount overpaid. This new era sucks ass, and I'm canceling my subscription. Well, it just started in January. And by the way, if you cancel that subscription, just keep coming here live during the fights, and you know we got your back. We've been doing it since the pandemic, and no one can touch us. We have the highest numbers. We beat everybody. They're all pissed off still. How does MMA Weekly beat us? Because we're better. That's why. And we started first. 2 reasons. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure those 2 reasons out. All right, let's transition because we got a little bit of a shorter show today. Got about 15 minutes left. We're going to shoot for an hour after big events and hopefully eventually all the events. But there's a bunch more stuff to talk about here today on the show, not just that BMF belt, right? Not just that event. It really was a dominant performance by Oliveira. Now the question becomes, does he get the red panty night? Gaethje and Topuria
Conor
are
McGregor.
fighting at the White House. Gaethje and Topuria are fighting at the White House, right? So obviously that's the main event at the White House. No Jones, no McGregor. We just talked about why you're not seeing them. It's the money. Why pay all those guys all that money? If Jones wanted the same $15 million that Conor Ben is getting from Dana White with Zuffa Boxing, we'll hear about that as well. But we're going to transition here, and I'm not sure exactly which clip this is, so forgive me on this one. But, Scott, what do we have here?
Him mentioning the status on Conor McGregor.
All right, let's just give me 1 second on that, because I just want to say one thing leading up to that, because Charles Oliveira has a choice now, right? Is it going to be you're looking at right now Gaethje and Topuria at the White House, right? So obviously with Islam gone and Ilya at the top of that division, Gaethje has that fight. That's Sarukian's the odd man out with Oliveira. We have Dana talking about Sarukian too, which we'll get to in a minute. Sarukian falls into the Mighty Mouse category, which is, I love Demetrius, forgive me, Mighty Mouse, but the fans spoke, and then when they speak, they speak. No one really cared, and you didn't draw the numbers, and Sarukian's that dude. Like, does anybody care about Arman Sarukian? And we'll get to that. But if I'm Oliveira, I fight the next guy we're going to hear about. Here it is from Dana White.
Obviously tweeting a lot today. He wasn't very impressed with the fight. Says, if they want, I'll spank Charlie, obviously about Charles Oliveira. Is there any update on Conor McGregor? He did a podcast today with Chael Sonnen saying that he probably won't fight on the White House because of the amount of revenue he could bring in. So is there any update on when or if he'll fight again?
No. But we are definitely talking to Conor, obviously.
But there's no timetable? You just, okay.
Not even close.
Dana back here.
Yep.
Earlier you had said
That was it.
All right, that's it.
Not even close. You gotta look at the body language and everything very closely on this.
Very closely with Dana. We know him well, Scott. You've seen that body language from 5 feet away for 20 years, man. Conor's not fighting again, bro. Can you play that clip again, just one more time, so people can see what we're talking about here?
No. But we are definitely talking to Conor, obviously.
But there's no timetable? You just, okay.
Not even close.
Dana
Yeah.
back.
There it is. Not even close. So the body language that Scott's talking about there, well, Scott, you tell him. You're the one who said it. I know exactly what you mean, though. It's Dana's body language that we're looking at here. You know what I'm saying? And it's the eyes. He's looking down. I mean, you put anybody on this. That guy, John Kiriakou, who's doing all those videos, the CIA guy, put him on the case, and we'll see. But no, Conor's not fighting again, everybody. I would be stunned. I would be shocked. Dana's now saying Jones won't fight again. He went from Jones is the greatest of all time. He knew that he might have another John Jones fight to sell, right? Maybe against Aspinall. The eye poke changed everything. The eye poke heard around the world. Would it be Jones and Aspinall at the White House if not for the eye poke by Cyril Gane? Probably not. But when I look at Conor McGregor's possibility with the UFC, I think they dance around one another. I think Conor will chase some clout. The UFC will use his name to get some publicity and some attention. When you speak Conor McGregor's name, when you see it on social media, the numbers go way up. The attention, people's ears and eyes go like this. Everybody wants to see the notorious MMA back in the octagon. Everybody wants to see the guy who built this thing. You can talk about Kimbo on the Ultimate Fighter show, and that was the first big boost that the UFC got, no doubt about it, Kimbo Slice. Then Brock Lesnar comes in. The WWE universe starts coming in with him, and ironically, they're under the same TKO umbrella, which is screwing up both right now, the UFC and the WWE, because why? The first people they answer to are not anybody else besides shareholders. They're 1, 2, and 3. So the shareholders rule now. But Brock brought the WWE fans over. Then Ronda came in, set the world on fire. Female fans everywhere. Everybody loved Ronda. The UFC is growing, growing, growing. And I don't want to leave out Chuck and Tito and Rampage and Rashad in the beginning and those guys as well. And the first Ultimate Fighter, the one that really put that show on the map between, Bonner and Griffin. All those were big, but they all pale in comparison to the Irishman who came in and flipped this sport upside down and made them billions of dollars. They sold the company based on that. They did the Mayweather fight and made a fortune off Conor McGregor, and he literally built this to what it is now. And he's even on a contract that he signed in 2018. He's saying that you have to adjust it for inflation. So he's not going to come back without a ton of money, pay-per-view points. So how does Conor get pay-per-view points? They can still do pay-per-views, remember. They can still do pay-per-views. It's not out of their contract with Paramount. They can do a one-off pay-per-view anytime they want and pay Conor points. They could. And they could have done it at the White House. I guarantee you Paramount would have put up a big stink. But if Conor comes back and they made it a pay-per-view, that's the way to pay him. Or you say to Paramount, hey, you don't want us to do it on pay-per-view? Then you pay him. You know that this isn't in our contract. You pay the difference if you want Conor McGregor. We're only obligated to give you these fights. Now, in those contracts, it'll say things like certain number of ranked fighters, certain number of title fights. If you have certain stars, maybe they appear a certain number of times, and you agree to that. But the UFC would never sign, I don't think, a deal like that right now based on Conor McGregor and what's been going on with him. You look at Dana's face and you look at his body language. You look at Conor McGregor almost every time he does a video, and the last thing you think that guy's going to do is get back in and fight. So I don't know what you guys think. I see some of you guys in the chat here, and we're just getting the show started. So let us know what you think. Don't be shy. Hop in anytime. Hit us with a like. Hit us with a sub. Hit that bell. We take the super chats as well, and we thank you so much for being here. We'll be here with the show. But you're not going to see Conor McGregor in the octagon again, I don't think. If you do, it won't be in the name of true competition. It'll almost be like an exhibition. But how do you get him back in there and make it a pay-per-view? Or how do you get him back in there and make sure that he's the main event? Which, by the way, Volk came out and tweeted, hey, there's no way Conor McGregor's anything but a main event fighter. You know what I mean? Or maybe they have Conor headline the prelims on Paramount and just, I don't know. Those are huge numbers on the prelims, by the way, where they had Cody on that last fight. And by the way, shout out to Cody. He puked in the octagon, got kicked in the nuts twice, and still managed to get the win. It's been a tough road for No Love, Cody Garbrandt, so shout out to him. But when I think about back to Conor McGregor and the possibility of him fighting again, people are saying, oh, Conor Diaz. You're seeing Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano coming up. And by the way, Francis Ngannou is going to be on that card. MVP, most valuable promotions. Jake Paul, who's not quietly, there's the wrong word that I just used there, quickly becoming an arch nemesis of Dana White's. Now, Francis Ngannou leaves PFL. Remember when Jake signed with PFL to do some MMA? PFL's got to be dead, right? They got to be dying because Francis is gone, Jake Paul. Francis is going to be on an MVP card, the Rousey Carano card. Jake's doing an MVP card on his own. No PFL, so obviously that deal and PFL's a joke, and Bellator's gone, and BKFC's rising. The Ben Rothwell Andrei Arlovsky title fight had 2 million views on BKFC, and so they're growing as well with a lot of former UFC fighters and boxers heading over to BKFC, which is seeming to really assert itself as the number 2 promotion. Jake Paul trying to come in and be that with MVP. You got Ronda and Gina, which, by the way, Ronda's been very clear coming out and say, hey, the UFC didn't want this fight. And that's not the UFC's business model anymore. She said it, right? And she said it before the White House card ever got announced. We go back and look at Ronda Rousey's video. I mean, I know the whole world got pissed off when she dissed Joe Rogan, but man, when you start taking shots at the UFC, people start to notice. Well, Ronda wasn't taking shots. She offered her services and this fight to the UFC first. They said no. So now, having said no, when Ngannou left to him, now you got Ronda and Carano, and you got Francis. What's the UFC going to do in terms of numbers that month? Dana never seems to care about this. It really is fascinating to me because we all know this in business. If you've ever owned a business of any kind or you know anything about business, what is the worst thing for any business to have happen other than going out of business, right? Or not making money? The worst thing for any business is lack of competition. What happens when you don't have anybody to compete against? Can you imagine a fighter fighting against himself? No. Can you imagine a basketball team playing by itself on a court without an opponent? No. You need competition. The Jordan Bulls had the Bird Celtics and the Isaiah Thomas Pistons, the bad boys. They had to climb those mountains before they could ever be champions. That's what happens in fighting. You see it all the time. It's a progression, right? When you don't have competition, it's like a fighter who doesn't have elite competition in his gym getting ready for title fights. You're not getting prepared as well as you could. You're not doing things the way that you did to get there because you don't have to anymore. Rocky III, after he loses to Clubber Lang, he's questioning his whole existence. He got rich. He didn't have that killer instinct anymore. The UFC got rich. The UFC got rich a long time ago. And if you notice, for the last 10 years, the quality's been going down. And once they signed the ESPN deal, which I've been a big part of because I'm the UFC insider for ESPN Radio, and I'm the host of our preview shows, preview shows before UFC fight cards with Booker T on ESPN radio across the country and around the world. I'm a big part of that. But since they got that ESPN deal, they got guaranteed money, and they still did the pay-per-views, but they got paid the same amount of money, whether it was 100,000 buys or whether it was $1 million. Okay? This is my understanding of it. Again, allegedly. No, but seriously, this is true. We've read it. It's public record, right? It's knowledge. There's some things in there we don't know, and that's by design. But the bottom line here, guys, period, point blank, end of story, is the UFC is a publicly traded company under TKO with WWE. That's why you see logos in the WWE ring, which Vince McMahon used to say, over my dead body. Well, you know, from the standpoint of being in the head of the wrestling world anymore, it is a dead body, and it is over his dead body. But that's WWE, and that's UFC now under TKO. They get huge money. They get guaranteed money in their media deals, with Ari Emanuel being the biggest in the world at doing that and the most number of resources. They're going to get the best deals. It's like Scott Boras with a Major League Baseball player. Yeah, I mean, there you go. It's Wall Street, baby. UFC Wall Street. Now, that opens up a whole nother can of worms and a whole nother question to me, which is, why in the world you want to sign an executive order, Donald Trump? And he'll never do this to Dana. Maybe someday this would happen, but how is it possible that a professional promotion like the UFC, right? They're a combat sports promotion. You know what I mean? How is it possible that you can be publicly traded? That's such a conflict of interest to be publicly traded as any kind of a sport. Can you imagine the NFL being publicly traded? The NBA being publicly traded? Maybe the teams will be at some point, and that'll ruin them too, because you answer to the shareholders, not the fans. You answer to the shareholders, not your athletes. You answer to the shareholders, not your employees, and not even yourselves. You answer to the shareholders. So the man you see on your screen right there, Dana White, all those years, the UFC made its bones. The best fight's the best. You don't get that shit you get in boxing. Nobody ever fights anybody. You're never going to see Pacquiao and Mayweather wait so long to fight each other. Can you believe they're fighting again as old men? It's ridiculous. That shows you all you need to know about boxing, you know. But I will say this about it. The lack of competition right now is killing the UFC. As much as Dana White made the UFC's bones by putting the best against the best, and that was what we got, the money was low back then, and it was historically low for a long time, embarrassingly low. Now the money's coming up. The UFC's making more. The fighters are making more. Everybody's making way more. You're not seeing the biggest fighters more than once or twice a year, and you won't. You're not, because A, they don't want to pay them, and B, the fighters, you get a lot of money, you get smarter. You don't want to fight 4 times a year. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to see what DeRitter did last year again. I mean, you give that guy credit. He's near the top of the rankings, and he fought 4 times. The 4th one was a loss. I bet he wishes he didn't fight Allen. But when I think about this, and I think about the lack of competition for the UFC and who they answer to now, this is where Jake Paul comes in. Jake, you already saved boxing. They don't know it yet. They'll never admit it, but you saved boxing. You saved boxing. There is no draw in the sport of boxing besides Canelo. Garcia's a little bit. Fury and Wilder drew a little bit. We never got Fury and Joshua, which is aggravating and annoying. But the same thing's happening now in the UFC. You're not always going to get the biggest names. You're not always going to get the best fights. And the reason is money. Indirectly, shareholders being number one, because you have to make sure that those shareholders continue to invest with you and that you continue to attract that money and those dollars. It's a drop in the bucket. To give you an example, the Miami Dolphins owner, Stephen Ross, in the NFL, he just sold 1% of the team. 1% of the team for $125 million. It's a $12.5 billion valuation. Anytime you need cash, you just go, hey, we're going to go get 125 mil. We'll give away 1%. Those are the kinds of deals that are going to happen in the future with this. So the door is wide open for Jake Paul, Ronda, Carano, Ngannou. My guess is this will be the first of many for MVP. I think they're going to make a serious run at the UFC. I think Jake came at Dana in the beginning, and he's had this planned all this time because he's freaking brilliant, and so is his brother, whatever you think about him, right? Dare I say, go Jake? Dare I say, go Jake? Go Jake Paul. Dare I say it? I've become a fan of his. I became a fan of his when I went to interview him, and the people at Showtime tried to tell me that no, I was next in line. They tried to tell me I wasn't getting it, so I almost jacked the PR guy, this little peon. I almost jacked him up against the wall, literally, because I waited all day. I had already interviewed Anderson Silva, and Jake was walking by, and he goes, "What's the deal?" I said, "They're telling me I can't interview you," and I was the only one left in line. and they're saying you got to go and there's no more time. And he goes, that's bullshit. He goes, what do you need? We came in back, we did the interview, and that's when I became a Jake Paul fan. It was purely personal. Those two guys are two of the most brilliant guys in sports right there. They want Dana White's throne. Logan's one of, if not the biggest WWE superstar right now, Logan Paul. He fought Floyd Mayweather. Jake Paul fought Mike Tyson. Think of the fights that these social media kids talk themselves into, and they're elite athletes. Yeah, Jake got pummeled by Anthony Joshua, but he's using himself as a sacrificial lamb to build his own company. Think about that. Think about that from Jake Paul. And think of what he's done. He held a giant mirror up to the face of boxing and said, you suck, fix it. And I think he's done a lot toward fixing it. And I know we got to wrap the show up. We got a couple of minutes left. Really appreciate you guys coming. We'll be more organized in the future, and I'll be able to do it a little more cleanly with the sound clips and get to more sound clips and things like that. We have a whole bunch of them. But I do want to say this before we go, right? Conor Benn got $15 million for one fight from Dana, and John Jones reportedly was asking for at least that. You just went on for a year saying he's the greatest of all time in the UFC. You give a boxer. Now, Dana's been very clear, I'm taking over the boxing world, even to the point where it's stupid, a couple of guys in their 50s, him and Eddie Hearn talking about boxing each other, and it's just like stupid, man. And Dana said it, I'm 56 years old, I'm not fighting anybody, but he's making it clear the boxing's different from the UFC, but to offer Conor Benn $15 million for one fight, first fight in, first big name that you bring in for that, Zuffa Boxing Enterprise, and then you're going to tell John Jones, who you've been saying
arthritis in his hips. Apparently, he's been.
Is that something you want to do? Is sort of
that he's not worth it. You're going to tell John Jones he's not worth it. And how are you going to do that when you're paying Conor Benn $15 million and you're saying John's the greatest fighter of all time? It doesn't make any sense. He basically retired John Jones after a year of calling him the greatest of all time. Now he's shitting on him again. And that's Dana, because he can't make any money off him right now. And I don't know what the fight was that fell off. I have my gut on it, and I'll leave you with this real quick, and I know we got to run. But I will say this. I'll leave you with this. We've heard that the Gaethje-Topuria fight was the last one added, and it wasn't going to be on the card, which I love that Gaethje's the headliner. I've known him forever. He's my boy from Arizona, 16 years old. I met him. He headlined UFC 300, the first Paramount card, and now the White House card. He deserves it. Maybe right now Topuria is the best in the world, and people think Justin won't give him much of a fight, but he can shock the world on the White House lawn. And if that fight was added last, that tells me if it wasn't Jones and Pereira, the fight that fell off, it was Conor McGregor who fell off. And that was the reaction that we got on the stage from Shelby and Hunter Campbell, because Conor had said he wanted to fight Alex Pereira, and maybe they were working on that on some level. Remember, Conor's not a 45 or a 55 or anywhere near. He's not even a 170 anymore. So if he's going to fight Dubronx might have to go up to defend that BMF, or Conor may have to cut a shit ton of weight because he is nowhere near 155 right now. So maybe it was Conor and Pereira that fell off. I had heard about that. Maybe it was Alex and Jones. Maybe, I don't know. But to get Cyril Gane against Alex Pereira as the co-main event, that cheating, eye-poking, somehow now has gotten 5 UFC title fights, Cyril Gane, is beyond me. And I'm going to talk a lot more about this. We have a lot more shows coming your way, a lot more content we're going to start to drop on MMA Weekly. We got to put this one to bed right now. It's the first episode in a long time of UFC Fallout on MMA Weekly. UFC Fallout 326. Don't rip Charles Oliveira for the BMF belt performance. He did what he had to do to win the fight. Keep going in the rankings. Keep going on the title path and toward that red panty night. The UFC made the BMF a footnote in its own title fight when it was the main event and the marquee and the star attraction of the event. They made it a footnote. They didn't used to do these things. Competition is good. I don't know. I'm not shitting on anybody. I'm just saying facts are the facts, and things are not great right now. So MVP with its first mixed martial arts event coming up, the UFC, I don't want to say losing momentum, but right now, a big PR mess. No Jones, no Conor, and fans are not happy about the BMF fight and really not happy about the White House card. Thanks to Scott Peterson. Thanks to all of you. Don't forget, subscribe, like, hit that bell. Thank you for all the super chats. We will be back very soon. Keep looking out for another episode of UFC Fallout, and we will be live, of course, for every numbered event during the fights, bringing you the greatest fight companion show in the sport, the #1 rated with the most viewers, thanks to you. I'm Jim Gries. Call me Gries, Gries, at Jim Gries _ on social media, at MMA Weekly. Keep your game tight and your mind right. See you next time on UFC Fallout, right here only on the largest independently owned combat sports website in El Mundo, MMA Weekly.